maybe we just talk about like that visit to El Salvador.
Yeah.
238 men have been sent there, most of them Venezuelan, to CECOT. We now know, ProPublica just released this, the Trump administration knew the majority of Venezuelans sent to the Salvadoran prison had not been convicted of crimes. And sort of breaking that down even more, only 20 of the 238 men had any arrests or convictions. 11 were robbery, assault, murder, and 4 of them were gun possession. So like 11 so-called violent criminals. And obviously, to say nothing of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the ways that they're targeting people, you know, in immigration court when they're trying to be law abiding. But like, why did you go? And then what was it like?
So just the issue of immigration, and that I don't even know if that's the right term for this, but the treatment of immigrants and any sort of other by this administration has always been one of the issues that like riles me up the most. And from, you know, the get-go, Trump has fully, you know, followed through on his pledge around mass deportations and so much targeting of immigrants and refugees, I think, in a way that I even never expected in my, you know, worst nightmares, like from kidnapping people from their immigration appointments to just ripping, you know, families apart across the country right now, you know, at their workplaces or at schools and safe, you know, places no longer being part of the equation. So my district is extremely diverse. I'm the daughter of immigrants. Like, this is just something that's very important to me. Then this case in particular, I think, you know, we've been talking of like, my parents immigrated here from Iran. I grew up hearing about authoritarian regimes. My mom would always say things like, you think democracy is guaranteed, and I promise you, like, things can change overnight. And I remember just laughing at her, not taking it seriously. You know, I'm like, okay, Mom, like, this is America. It's going to be fine. And now, I think this case really was that moment for me where you have the president defying a conservative Supreme Court that I rarely agree with these days. And that Supreme Court is saying you should never have sent this person to a prison in a foreign country when several years ago, you know, it was very clear that he was prohibited from being sent back. So the fact that he defied that Supreme Court order really terrifies me. And it should terrify everybody. And, you know, we tried to use official channels to go to El Salvador through the Oversight Committee. That was obviously rejected by the Republican majority. And look, I think that we are living in a time where, and you somewhat alluded to this, so much of our power comes from like being able to shape public sentiment, being able to inform people about what's going on, and being creative. And if I'm not going to get an official approval to take a trip and do all the things, then I'm just going to book a flight and go and figure it out. And that's what me and 3 of my colleagues did. And I'm so glad we did, because honestly, again, also Trump is flooding the zone. They are doing millions of crazy things every single day. And if you don't very intentionally keep attention on an issue and keep talking about it, it's going to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And I think that was, something that was very successful, because, you know, we kept the discussion going, and there was polling afterward that says the majority of Americans believe that the president is defying the Supreme Court, that this person, you know, Kilmar Garcia, should be returned home. And I think that says something.
Yeah. Let me ask you just on the visit, like, what was the reception of from El Salvador? You know, we saw, Chris Van Hollen, right, sort of be coldly received and denied access and then given access. And then, we see Kilmar in new clothes sitting with him. They tried to orchestrate the drinks that they were having to make it look like they were sipping margaritas. And then the President Bukele even said, look at them, they're sipping margaritas. I was just like, what world are we in? But like, tell me about the treatment. I mean, we know that if you're a Republican and you're going to do propaganda on behalf of this kind of incarceration or this kind of, lawlessness, you'll get the red carpet rolled out for you. We've seen actually your Republican colleagues visit CECOT, go inside of it. So it all depends on how you're going to report on it or what you're going to say. But can you give us any insight about how they rejected you or what it looked like?
Yeah, so we had to be relatively careful in that regard, in that because we were not officially going on a trip, we had to do everything we had to attempt to do it through the US government. So by that, I mean, we sent, like, once it was all set, and this all happened very quickly, by the way, like a matter of a couple of days, we decided to do this. And we sent a letter, the four of us who traveled, that we made the request to go visit CECOT and to see Kilmar Garcia, but we sent it through the U.S. Embassy. And we had a meeting set with the ambassador to El Salvador, who was appointed under Biden. So a couple of things. We got to travel with the family's attorney, which was incredibly helpful because he had also been there with Senator Van Hollen. Obviously has the context, was very, and I just emphasize this because I think even I had some doubts about the trip. He was extremely grateful and the family was extremely grateful. We got to FaceTime with them while we were there and had a deep conversation with them about the case. And they were very pleased that people were actually doing something and keeping attention on this and trying to help.
Yeah.
So we were with him. The four of us had a classified briefing with the U.S. ambassador. The moment, we arrived, he told us that our request was rejected by the government of El Salvador to see him. And so then we had a number of other requests, and our main goal was to figure out also whether or not there had been any effort by the U.S. government to actually take steps to facilitate the return.
Right, as the Supreme Court stipulated.
Because they had never quite, at that point, they hadn't really, they had tiptoed around it. They hadn't actually addressed that. And from everything that we got in that briefing, we concluded that the answer was no. And there were no efforts being made. In fact, to that point, no effort had been made either to ask about the Venezuelans that you mentioned, the hundreds of people who, why did they get sent to a country?
Right, because Kilmar is Salvadoran, you're right.
Yes, the Venezuelan migrants have nothing to, there's no reason they should be sent to this third country. And that's happening in many other cases, and we can talk about that too. But so that was something that we also asked the ambassador about. And then the case of Andre Romero, who is the gay makeup artist who also was sent there, and his family has not heard from him since March. I mean, these are just people are being disappeared to foreign prisons in these countries. So then we wrote a letter to the Secretary of State with these demands. We held a big press conference, had a ton of local press there. National press from the US had also traveled to go. So I think we really were able to kind of highlight the issue further. And then finally, we met with human rights groups on the ground. That was incredibly enlightening.
That's great.
Scary. Yeah, to get a real briefing from them on how the government there has sort of evolved over the last couple of years, and a lot of similarities between how Trump is really adopting Bukele's authoritarian playbook. And that he also, they are in a constitutional crisis. He has defied their Supreme Court by overstaying his term as president and so many other things. So,
all kinds of there was remote vote, absentee voting via app that was very shady in his last reelection. And again, we know that Bukele is a darling of the right. He spoke at CPAC. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right that there is a lot of commingling. They're fawning over this kind of mass sweeps, and they're attempting to do that here in the U.S. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/bitchuationroom. Do